This is Barry Lebow. I'm going to be starting a series, and the first one today will be termites. My series is going to be on stigma and real estate stigma, particularly. And my interest in this goes back to 1970s when down the street from where I was living, there was a murder. And there were three people murdered in the house, not far from where I lived, in a very nice house. And the murder's never been solved. And I got fascinated by who would buy that house and what would be the difference in value. Would there be a diminution or a loss in value because there had been this notorious, three people murdered is notorious. Now, what's interesting for those that are not realtors, please understand we do not have to, in the province of Ontario or in most provinces in Canada, disclose murder. We do not have to disclose suicide or an unnatural death. We do have to find out if a buyer asks us. And the exception to what I just said is Quebec has a rule that a murder has to be disclosed. But that was my initial fascination. I got into stigma because of urea formaldehyde and did over 1,000 cases, and then it led to other stuff. Today, my focus, this one segment, is going to be on something that pops up constantly in this area, Southern Ontario, and it can apply across Canada into the United States, all through the United States, and that is the concept of termites. Now, are termites themselves, or the infestation of termites, a stigma? And the answer is, actually, they are. And the reason they are is for obvious reasons. I'm a buyer, I'm buying a home, and I want a carefree home. And what happens is the seller doesn't say anything. I move in and find out that the house is riddled. Like you can see the wood behind me that's eaten. Now, I've been into houses. I've actually had a house recently in Toronto, one of the most expensive cities for real estate in North America, where I have come in at a zero value. That includes the land. The reason is the termites, the house has been so badly impacted. The city has said you cannot walk in this house because you're ready to the floors are paper thin, the joists are gone. It's a semi-detached. It is very old. The other half of the house, the only way to fix it is to demolish, and you can't demolish it because the other side would fall down and the people don't want to sell. But you're going to say, well, Barry, but there's land value. Well, there are problems with that. We think the termites are tunneled as far down as 7-8 feet into the ground, and the entire ground is infested with termite tunnels that go through this neighborhood. So let's look at this from a buyer perspective. Let's look at this from a real estate agent perspective. I am talking from Toronto. Toronto is infested with termites in the downtown core, east and west, and other pockets in the suburbs and other areas. What stupidly people did was they brought home firewood, or they brought home some cabinets or something from a termite infested area, brought it home, and then the termites spread. That's one area. The other thing is some people took landfill and dumped that landfill from downtown core into suburban locations, spreading the termite nests. So termites have spread, and termites are a reality. Where I find agents don't know what they're doing, and the public doesn't understand, is that when you buy a house in a termite area, first of all, the agent that you are working with and the agent that works in the core has to understand that almost any house has the potential of being a termite infested house or formerly a termite infested house. So let's look at this. How do you protect yourself? Get a survey done of a survey from like something like a company like Aetna, or in the States, Orkins. You've got to be able to find these termites if the seller doesn't disclose and the listing agent doesn't know because the seller didn't tell them. So What you do is, it's a very simple thing. Every agent working in the core, and that's east and west of in Toronto, and a lot of other areas, should put a simple clause in. And it's a pull down clause that's in our forms. And it says that to the best of the seller's knowledge, during their time, there's never been any termites. And it's a simple clause. So now you've got at least some protection. And for the real estate agent, it is even greater protection for one reason. The agent has gone out of their way to put it in and acknowledge it. So if there is a lawsuit later, the agent can say, but I did put this in to protect my people. That's one. Two, you can pick up the phone and call the various termite companies and say, I'm calling about 100 Maplewood Drive. Do you have a file on this property? It takes only a minute or two, and they're more than welcome to say to you, oh, we treated that property years ago, but they're not continuing with the program. And I'll get into that in a second. And you've got that. So now you note that in your diary. That's what a good real estate agent does. And that's what they should do for the public. Now, here's where some of the problem lies. The problem lies that 100 Maplewood was treated years ago, but you've got to understand something. You really can never get rid of termites. You can get rid of them in the moment, you can fix, but if you don't put an invisible moat of chemical, around the property, termites can recur. So the good termite service companies, with Aetna being number one in the city of Toronto, they have an annual program where they treat it. Now, there are new chemicals. In the old days, you had to do it every year. There are chemicals now that have 5 years that you don't have to treat. But there's an ongoing program. It is not, please do not use the word warranty, because you can't warrant, because termites, despite the best of treatment, can still get in through other means. But when you have this program, what people do, and this is what I'm finding a lot with the lawsuits that come up, they've treated the house once, but they chinsed out, they didn't keep up with the program, which isn't that expensive per annum. And then the termites have come back into the house over the years. So the program, the agents, the listing agent says, treated for termites. But there's not an ongoing program. Without the ongoing program, so what you as a buyer, what you as the buyer agent want to do is, also, if they ever mention that there have been termites, what is the ongoing program? Do you have an annual contract? And you want a copy of that. So now you're protecting the buyer's protecting their investment, and in turn, you're protecting yourselves from lawsuits. You don't want this. For a seller watching this video right now, any seller who doesn't disclose is a fool, because you are going to get sued. And why is this stigma? Because stigma itself, the word, is something that is branded. It's a mark of shame. That's a simple definition of the word stigma. In real estate, stigma is anything that has to be constantly disclosed and can take away from the value of the property. In Toronto, and I'll use Cabbagetown and Riverdale as good examples, people that work in the area expect that there could have been termite damage. It's become more accepted. The stigma is minimal, but it's there. But when the house has extensive damage, the house does become stigmatized. Be careful, use the clauses, try to get a termite inspection, always phone the termite company. That's my advice on this type of case. I'll say this to you, there is actually a law firm in Toronto there's so many termite cases, they're almost specializing in litigation involving buyers finding out there's termites and selling the sellers and the real estate agents that were involved. So it is a very extensive problem. It is an ongoing problem, and it is a real buyer beware Thank you. And I'll be doing a whole series of all kinds of aspects on stigma. This is my first one, termites, because it fascinates me. Barry Lebow, and always open for your questions. Take care.